this is David with the Time Rift Arcade, and this is going to be my next project. We just recently picked this up. This has been in storage for probably 15 years or more. Don't even know if it works. It's a little rough shape, so I'm going to restore it back to as close to new as possible.
And for those that don't know, the PlayChoice-10 is essentially like an old 8-bit Nintendo Entertainment System that can take up to 10 different games inside.
Now, we do happen to have a Nintendo Super System, if you were wondering, which is a really similar thing, but this one's actually based on the Super Nintendo, not the original 8-bit. And it even has like these giant controllers that are actually extended up on the control panel that you can play just like a giant Super Nintendo controller. This unit only supports 3 games, and you actually have to select them with these buttons on the front here.
The PlayChoice-10 was released in 1986 and came in both single and dual screen versions. There were eventually 53 different games available for it that an arcade operator could pick from to populate the machine, and ultimately it was discontinued in 1992. Now, the one that we have is the dual screen version, and if you take a look at the game Punch-Out, you may notice a similarity. Indeed, it's the exact same cabinet with the exact same 2-monitor configuration, only with different artwork and obviously a different control panel layout, as Punch-Out was only meant for one player. Okay, here's the board set. Now this thing is kind of heavy. Let's take out these games right quick. So looking at this board, one of the things that surprised me was when I spotted a Z80 microprocessor here. After all, I knew it would need to run a 6502 style processor to be compatible with the NES games, and sure enough, here's the CPU that runs the games, and here's a modified PPU that outputs RGB instead of composite. I am concerned about these EEPROMs that have no cover over the window. I noticed a number of the game cards were like that too, so I'm going to cut out some pieces of foil tape and cover the windows on these just to be safe. I'm also concerned about this battery, which could leak all over the board and destroy it. I checked it with a voltmeter and found it was still producing a whopping 0.005 volts. I think it's safe to say that removing it certainly won't hurt anything. I mean, even if I can't find a replacement, it won't make it any worse than it is now, but at least it can't leak on the board. Let's have a look at the games we got with this system. Wild Gunman, never heard of it. Duck Hunt, okay, everyone knows this one. Baseball, please, did people really play this? Hogan's Alley, never heard of it. And the last one is Pro Wrestling, and at least I've heard of it but never played it. This is a terrible set of games for this machine. I looked up the user rankings for these games, and the 2 best games we have are Duck Hunt and Pro Wrestling, which don't even make it into the top 50. And let's not even talk about what a terrible game NES Baseball is. Well, I think we might have a solution for this.
Okay, so we're at our secret boneyard of basically broken arcades, and I think we have another PlayChoice-10 back here, and it might have some better games, so let's see if we can find them. It's going to be a little bit of a tight squeeze. Okay, I think this is it. It doesn't even have a lock on it. Oh yeah, we definitely got a lot more games on here. Oh, look at that. We got Excite Bike, Super Mario Brothers. Oh yeah, I'm gonna take this board back with us. We'll have a look.
Okay, so now I have 2 of these. Let me take the cards out here where we can see all of the names. We have another Duck Hunt, Tennis, The Goonies, 1942, Russian Attack, Gradius, Excite Bike, Super Mario Brothers, another Baseball, and another Pro Wrestling. So there are at least a few good ones here, but you know, I mean, it's totally possible to pull the EEPROMs out of one of these games and replace them with something more desirable. Or I could just go on eBay and find the exact games I want for this system. Oh, I took the battery out of the second board, and check this out. It's bulging on the side. I'm going to see if I can remove the covering and have a look. Yuck. Yeah, see what I mean? These are ticking time bombs. Okay, time to get started restoring this thing. Upon further examination of the condition, I've decided this machine isn't so bad of a condition that we need a full restoration, so I'm just going to do more like a partial restoration. I started by removing the rear door to take a look inside, and I noticed the door wasn't even locked, and the lock itself was completely bent over.
Well, that's going to have to be fixed.
Looking at the inside, I didn't see anything that required immediate attention before powering it up for a proper test, so it's time to plug it in and see if it works at all. Usually, on a first power up, as long as smoke doesn't start pouring out of the machine, I'll consider it a win. But in this case, it does appear that the board set and at least the top monitor is functioning. I guess I'll have to select a game to see if the bottom one is working.
Let's try Duck Hunt. Hey, hey, hey.
And it does appear the bottom monitor is working as well. I'll pull the gun out to test Duck Hunt.
Looks like the gun doesn't work.
Alright, well, before I take this thing apart, I thought we'd look at the coin counter. It appears this unit has been played over 32,000 times, which means it would have earned over $8,000 from quarters, which isn't really a good number, but considering this machine didn't have any good games like Super Mario Bros., I'm surprised it wasn't worse. Okay, let's remove the control panel. Here's just a close-up reminder of what rotten shape this is in. Now I'll remove the front plexiglass, and you can see there's some pretty good burn-in on these monitors. Let me clean them up real quick, and we'll see if we can figure out what is burned in on them. So these monitors are not from a PlayChoice-10 originally, so what I'll do is I'll invert the picture and increase the contrast so we can bring this to life. And what you'll see is this burn-in is from the top monitor of Punch-Out. But what's interesting is that even the bottom monitor here is the same, so both of them at one point in time were in a top monitor in Punch-Out. Okay, we're going to start working on the control panel, and step one is to always take pictures and document the current setup, so when it's time to reassemble, we know where everything goes. Then we'll start the teardown process. After the control panel is down to bare metal, we'll go ahead and give it some primer and paint and get it ready for the new artwork. But while we wait for that to dry, I'll get to work on removing the side art. It came off without too much effort. The problem is it left behind all of the adhesive, so I'll try spraying some goof off and let it sit for a few minutes. Unfortunately, it had zero effect, so I'll go with something a bit stronger. This is Citrus Strip. After a few minutes, the adhesive could be scraped off easily. Normally, I'd be concerned about this stuff eating away the paint, but Nintendo often used melamine coatings on the outside, which is what this one uses, so the stripper is having no effect on that. The side cleaned up very nicely. It's very smooth to the touch now, but now I get to repeat it all over again on the other side. After doing the other side, I noticed this chip here, and I was afraid that something like a piece of clothing were to snag on this, it would just rip it off. So I'm going to attempt to fix it with some wood glue, and then I'll clamp it down for a bit. And let's remove the bandage and see how it healed up. I mean, it's not perfect, but at least it won't get any worse now. Now I'm going to remove the CRTs. I need to remove them for two reasons. One is for recapping, and the other I'll explain here shortly. We'll take the CRTs over to the electronics room for servicing. Now, much like with the control panel, I always start by documenting the current state of the monitor, so I have reference pictures. Now it's time to disassemble it. I often take a few minutes to clean the CRT. It doesn't have any effect on the function, but it does make it much less nasty to touch and carry around. Most of what's found on these is usually cigarette smoke. I have two cap kits here, one for each monitor, and these kits also come with two transistors for the audio boards because those are prone to failure. Just so we're clear, if this were a personal project for home, I probably wouldn't replace any caps on it because it was already working. But these caps are at least 15 years old, and possibly much older than that. And these machines are going to be expected to run every day for years on end, so I'd rather go ahead and recap it now than wait for it to break. Unfortunately, the way these caps are soldered in, the pins are folded over on the bottom, which makes them a royal pain to desolder. I mean, when I put in a new cap, I bend the legs slightly to keep it from falling out, but I definitely don't bend them all the way flat with the board. Okay, now it's time to turn my attention to the audio board. Admittedly, the smaller board is much easier to handle and work on, and replacing the caps is quite easy, but what about those transistors? Well, one problem I have is I can't get a screwdriver in at the proper angle to take these screws out, so I'll have to desolder one of the heat sinks. And now, not only can I get this one unscrewed, but I can also unscrew the other one without having to take it off. And I'll use some alcohol to remove the old heatsink compound. The next little challenge is that if you look at the way the pins are bent on the original transistors and look at my new ones, clearly these aren't going to fit. So I'll take my pliers and attempt to bend the new transistor legs to match. And I think that'll work just fine. Now it's time to put this thing all back together. And here's a little fun fact for you. Even though this was discharged already, this tube has sat disconnected for about a week, and I can guarantee you it has developed a small charge from just sitting there. I'm going to turn off the lights, and let's see if we can see a spark. Yep, there it was. It's pretty hard to see, so I'll show it again. Weird, huh? So I just have the monitor on a cart and I've connected it to the rear of the machine. Time to test it. And well, it works, but there are two problems that I can see. One problem is we're getting a mirror image and I need to reverse two of the wires on the yoke. These are designed to be reversed for machines that use mirrors to reflect the picture to the player. Okay, so that's fixed. Okay, that looks better, but now it's time to tackle the problem that the picture is inverted. So this is just a matter of moving the video cable to a different input. And there we go. There's our menu. Okay, next job is, let's work on the new control panel artwork. The biggest challenge with these is getting them lined up correctly. Once we're sure it's perfect, we'll clamp it down and then pull one side of the wax paper off and attach it. And once that's done, we can remove the clamps and then do the other side. Okay, that all looks good. Now let's cut out the holes. The next job is to install the new side art, but before I can do that, I'll need to remove these carriage bolts, and this means removing the monitor brackets on the inside. Hence, that is the other reason I mentioned earlier that I needed to remove the CRTs. So, I'll get those removed. Now that the bolts are out, I need to clean off the old vinyl artwork that was still left under the heads of the bolts. Okay, let's put on some artwork. Okay, that's all done. Now time to make some holes so I can reinstall the carriage bolts. There's this scuff in the melamine here, and this is a little trick we use sometimes. We just coat it with a Sharpie and then wipe it off. Did it work? Well, here's the before image and here's the after, so you be the judge. Okay, the next job is to install the T-molding. I'm not sure why, but this one was completely missing T-molding when we got it. This is already starting to look much better. One thing I noticed when putting on the T-molding is the marquee was missing the top bracket. Besides, the backlight wasn't working either, so we need to work on that. Apparently, somebody just crammed a fluorescent light in here and didn't even bother to bolt it down. And worse yet, look at how they attach the wires. This will have to be replaced. So I'll install a brand new LED light fixture. This particular one offers 3 color temperatures. Obviously, I'm going to want to go with the bright white. And then reinstall the marquee. We found a compatible bracket for the top from our scrap bin. Now let's plug it in and see how it looks. Excellent, it looks great. The next little chore is to clean the old lubricant out of the primary joystick. It's very stiff because the old lubricant has dried up, or possibly somebody used the wrong kind of lubricant. Either way, I've usually found a generous amount of alcohol will dissolve it. Now I'll re-lubricate it and reassemble it. And this is something we have to do on every single machine, which is replace the locks. This machine has 3 of them, which is about normal. I think we have some machines with as many as 5, though. And of course, here's the rear lock. This one was bent completely over, probably as a result of somebody trying to open the machine that didn't have a proper key. Seems some people would rather risk damaging the machine than to drill the lock out. Now I'm going to clean up the front of the machine a bit, as I've yet to do that. The gun holster is particularly dirty. Now we'll reinstall everything back into the cabinet. time to plug it in for a quick test. Everything appears to be working, except the monitors do need some color adjustments, which we'll do off camera. But we still have a problem that the gun is not working. I looked at the schematic, and thankfully it shows exactly which wires go to the gun trigger, so I've connected up a voltmeter to those wires to see if the actual microswitch in the gun is working, and it appears that it is not. So I think the problem is in the gun itself. So I disassembled the gun, and the problem was not hard to spot. One of the wires on the switch was literally broken off at the solder joint, which is weird as that's not even a joint that moves. Anyway, it was pretty easy to fix, so let's test it out.
Right. Ooh, okay, yeah, it's working.
Okay, so now it's time to take you back in time about 3 weeks earlier when we started this project. And now, here's the finished product. This restoration took approximately 35 man-hours, which is actually a bit on the low side, believe it or not. Anyway, I hope you come by the arcade and give the PlayChoice-10 a try. Maybe we'll have some better games in it by then. That's all for this episode. Hope to see you in the arcade.